I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. It won't make it into the film, but I think
I do that
it'll do
before
good.
every presentation.
So
Victory.
we're back again for back in the briefing room. We're going to try to do this live this time, so hopefully we can get it up on YouTube, and you'll see that there's at least two of us on film enjoying cigars. All three of us do. Where are you at, T?
Boom.
Hey.
Sorry about that.
That's a little forward.
Sorry, Mark. Sorry.
So we're back again talking about more PTSD issues. And seated to my right is a gentleman who truly lives by the term, never trust a big butt and a smile. And I just got that from when I looked over at you. And you'll figure out why as you go through the podcast, why he lives by that motto. Also off screen, who's with us almost every week, is T.
Yo.
And she's back for today's podcast. Hopefully it'll come out in video form, as we've been trying for our last one that hasn't been working.
Right.
So back to the never trust a big butt and a smile is Mr. Mark Freemark.
It's Frymark.
Frymark.
But free sounds a lot less expensive.
It does. I didn't do Hooked on Phonics when I was growing up. So superstar, officer extraordinaire, and published author of the book Headshot. Right? And I'm looking at it by Mark Frymark. For some reason, it looks like Freemark, but
half my family says Freemark, the other half says Frymark. It's a family feud.
okay.
So you're not in the
What
wrong.
do you prefer?
I say Frymark, but honestly, I grew up saying Freemark. When I was stationed in the military, I got stationed in Germany, and it's a German name. And I tried pronouncing it as Freemark over there, and the Germans were like, "We're not having it." No,
They didn't want you on their
that's
side.
Frymark.
Yeah,
Says,
you're on the other side.
Deine Namen ist Frymark. I said, "Okay, take it easy.
Be
I'm gonna
careful,
cause
man.
World War
Fuck
III here."
around, yeah.
Yeah, so I transitioned when I was in the Air Force over there, and I've stuck with it ever since.
All right, well, Frymark it is then, at least for this podcast.
Right.
I appreciate you coming down and enjoying the stick. And well, let's be honest, it's not water in that glass.
No,
But
there's an ice cube too.
yeah, no ice cubes. We don't want to dilute the flavored water that you have going on.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure and an honor, and I appreciate the invite. And I'm in the company of heroes, and I'm humbled to be here.
Well, let's not get carried away with the title.
Well, now you appreciate it now, and then at the end of the night, you're gonna be a fucking wreck. So don't get so
then
crazy.
I won't appreciate it.
Yeah, then you'll be cussing us out
I
on
wish
why
that glass was 5 times taller.
like the one you came in with, Jack in the Box Super Quencher.
Shut up. Hey, that's
I walked
secret.
in off the street with a brown bag.
Yeah. Let's
talk
not bring up bums around T. She can get quite offensive around those around them.
He looks like every hooker on Main Street carrying her little
Jack in the Box.
whether it's Jack in the Box or Circle K, the Circle K foamy cup.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just dive right into this. We'll clearly get into the book, but you are one of the members of PISTLE that does show up.
Amen.
Can you just kind of give us a brief rundown of what got you to where you're at prior to PISTLE? I mean, clearly, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I'm sure that everyone will know that you were diagnosed with PTSD over a critical incident.
Yes.
And if you don't mind, just kind of go over that critical incident, and then we can just kind of touch base on the effects after the shooting. If it was really just the shooting, or was it the after effects, or was it the totality of everything? How long did you have on at your department?
I was only on at my department for 4 years. I worked as a deputy sheriff prior to that, and a detention officer prior to that. I was in the Air Force for 10 years prior to that, a little over 10 years. And so in hindsight, when you look at PTSD, it's a cumulative thing. It's your lifespan. And at some point, something shatters that. And what shatters me and what put me into full-blown, where I just couldn't take anything else in myself as a person. I was on patrol. It was a quiet Sunday morning, if I believe was the day. And I was on day shift, day shift, sleepy Sunday. Nothing really happens. And we got a call of a possible suicidal subject in a trailer park a couple miles from where I was at. Another officer, it was his call, and so I got the backup call. And so I raced over there. By the time I got there, he had already contacted the person who called it in, it was apparently a nurse or like a caretaker that took care of this guy and checked in on him, made sure he was up on his medications and stuff like that. And so when I pulled up, and like I said, it was a slow Sunday, so in typical fashion in our department, if you didn't have anything going and a call came out, you would drift over to that call too. So as soon as I pulled up and got out of my car, another officer pulled up behind me, and that officer's name was Pete Ronan, good friend of mine. And so we walk up to the primary officer, whose name is Ron Solo.
That's a great name.
Not all true names here. These are character names, folks. Don't want to make
They're to protect the innocent.
To protect the innocent and still working. So anyway, Ron was out in front of this trailer, and I walk up to him. Me and Pete walk up to Ron, and we're like, "Hey, Ron, what do you got?" And so he gives us a brief rundown of the call. He's like, "Yeah, I was talking to this nurse, and she said she cares for this guy and checks in on him, and she checked in on him today. She said she thinks he's off his psych meds. He's really depressed because his girlfriend broke up with him. He wrecked his van, and he's been drinking all night." And I said, "All right, well, where's the nurse at?" And he said, she must have went back in the trailer. I said, "All right, let's go talk to her." So the three of us walk up into the carport side entry of this trailer. It's a little trailer, and in the driveway we see this wrecked van, consistent with what she had told him. And so we step into the side entry of the trailer, and it's the kitchen. As soon as we stand in the kitchen there's the nurse or the caregiver, whatever she is, standing right there. And so we asked her again. We're like, "Hey, ma'am, I know you told my partner Ron here." I said, "But can you tell Pete and I what's going on?" And so she goes through the litany of it again. She says, "Yeah, this guy, he's really depressed because he wrecked his van. His girlfriend broke up with him." She said, "I think he's been drinking all night. I think he's off his psych medication. And he's been banging his head into the wall." I was like, "Oh, this doesn't sound good." So
all indicators, by the way.
I didn't make detective, but in those, detectives would call those a clue.
Clue, yeah.
Yeah. So we're thinking, okay, so in our city, we get a minimum of 50 of these a week, like everybody does in the valley here in
bigger city.
Arizona.
Sure.
Yeah. You get just dozens and dozens of calls like this, and so you talk to the person. If they make a fatal statement like, "Hey, I want to hurt myself or somebody else," then you call out a crisis team. If the team determines that they need help, then they're going to go with them. If they don't voluntarily go, then that's where the police come in. We hook them up and take them in.
Forced committal.
Forced committal, exactly. So that's what we're expecting. And so I asked this caregiver, I said, "Well, what's the guy's name?" She said, "His name is Jerry." And I said, "Well, where's Jerry at?" She said, "He's down that hallway behind one of those closed doors." And I said, "Okay."
Is this a house?
It's a trailer.
Is it a trailer?
Mobile
It's a
home.
mobile home.
Okay.
Yeah, mobile home. And I'm not clear on mobile home lingo, if it was a single wide, double wide,
Tornado
bait.
bait.
Kind of wide. Yeah.
Was it a real long hallway, skinny?
It was
motherfucker?
Fatal
real
funnel.
long.
Yeah.
It was a real long hallway, skinny.
Everybody knows what they look like.
And
Fucking
just to
single mobile home.
set the scene for you, so we look down that hallway, and it's like the guy's got all the blinds closed, all the lights are off, and down at the end of that hallway, there's a little tiny light in the hallway. It's about as bright as a match, and so it's as dark as a cave down there. And so I said, so she told me his name is Jerry, and I said, "Okay, well, we get a lot of calls like this, ma'am. Why don't you wait outside? We'll talk to Jerry and see if we can help him out." And so the three of us strategize, and we're like, you know what? The hallway's so narrow, we don't really have a way to if the guy comes running out at us to like grab him, because we can't even get 2 people wide in that hallway. It's narrow. So it's Ron's call. And so we strategize and we say, okay, if he comes running out, Ron, you take your taser out. And if he comes running out at you, trying to harm us, you tase him and put him down, and then we'll jump on him and handcuff him.
Did this caregiver give you any information about weapons? Did she tell you anything about guns?
That's a good thing you mentioned that. So you must have read the book.
I read that motherfucking book.
She wants a
Yeah.
signing when
smart.
we're done with this whole thing.
That's why T's our off-camera narrator / coach, probably therapist too.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And superhero. So before she steps out and we tell her to wait outside, we ask her, does he have any weapons? And she said, this is exactly what she said to us. She said, and I said, she said, yeah, he does. He's got a gun. And so we're like, okay, well, what kind of gun? And she said, well, I don't know. And she acted frustrated. And I said, well, okay, I'm thinking she doesn't know because she doesn't know the caliber of gun, or she doesn't know anything about weapons. So we're just asking for a general description. And so we said, okay, so is it a little tiny handgun? Or is it a... Can we edit that part? It sounded like I just hit puberty right there.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Is it a little tiny handgun? Maybe it's because I'm scared.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
You're
getting
reliving
scared
it.
here.
We're going up a notch.
Yeah,
Little
I
tiny
stepped up an octave.
Oh,
Okay,
jeez.
so I'll finish the story in soprano. So I said, is it a tiny handgun? Or is it a longer gun that might be a shotgun or a rifle? And again, she just throws her hands up and she's acting all irritated now. She's like, I don't know. I just know he's got a gun.
Yeah, a gun is a gun.
And I said, okay, whatever. I said, just wait outside then. And I said, before you go, I said, what kind of guy is Jerry? And she said, what do you mean? I said, is he a nice guy or is he a jerk? And she looked at me and she said this. She said, all I know is he can be a real... Is this edited?
No, you can
say
say
it.
Okay.
asshole.
So in the book, I put a rated G version.
Yeah,
of it.
no, our
But what she
X
said-
version.
Okay, so I said, is he a nice guy or is he an asshole? And she looked at me and she says, all I know is he can be a real asshole.
Yeah.
He's got a gun. He's down that hallway, and I'd be careful if I were you.
Oh,
And
Hello.
It's important to
so,
know.
I mean, to hear somebody that's like a care person talk about their client that way or their patient that way, whatever their relationship was just unnormal, you know. So I was like, oh. I said, that doesn't sound right. I said, so we didn't have body cams back then. This was over 14 years ago. And so I said, but we had these little pocket tape recorders. And I said, ma'am, I said, I'm going to record what you said. I said, I'm going to record that. So I, grab my pocket tape recorder out and I turn it on. I says, you tell me the whole story again. So she runs through the litany. She's like, yeah, wrecked his van, girlfriend broke up with him, office psych meds, drinking all night, banging his head into the wall. I said, what's the last thing you said? I said, tell me exactly again. She said, he can be a real asshole. He's got a gun. He's down that hallway, and I'd be careful if I were you. I was like, okay, wait outside, ma'am. So she steps out of the little side kitchen entrance that we came in. So she stands out there, and now we strategize, and we say, okay, here we go. Ron, if he comes running out, tase him, put him down, and we'll tackle him and handcuff him. I said, but if that gun thing is real, because we're thinking, why can't she describe the gun in those general terms? And she couldn't. So we're immediately thinking, okay, so maybe she's never laid eyes on the gun. Maybe she knows he has of a gun or something. Who knows about the gun? But we're still treating it as it could be there. So I said, Ron, if that gun thing is real, I'm going to be on this side of the hallway with my gun out. I said, and I got you covered, lethal. And Pete, the other officer, who happened to be left-handed, like some sort of a circus freak, it was fortunate that he was abnormal like that, because he was left-handed, and he stood on the other side of the hallway and used the wall as cover for himself.
So you've got less lethal, and you've got too lethal.
And we got too lethal to cover him.
All right.
So we're figured we're set. We're going to bring this guy out, talk to him, and get a counseling team out here for him. And so we Ron takes about 2 steps into that hallway, and he calls out to the guy. He calls down this dark hallway, and he says, Jerry, this is Officer Solo from the police department. And from behind one of those closed doors, we get a response. This guy yells back at us in a voice that I will never forget. It sounded like the devil. And he yells back at us from behind one of those doors. He's like, again, this is rated X. So he says, "Fuck you," in a voice just like that. And so Ron turns around, and I mean, his eyes were big as saucers. He looked like he'd just seen a ghost, and I probably looked the exact same way. And I just put my hand up. I said, "No." I said, "He sounds really, really pissed off." I said, "Let's just keep talking to him and calm him down." And so Ron turns back around, and I said, "Call him out again, Ron." So Ron turns around, looks down this dark hallway, and he says, "Jerry, this is Officer Solo from the police department. We just want to talk to you." And again, he responds back from behind one of those closed doors, and he says, "Come and get me."
Hey, fuck, it costs what, bro?
Well, so we're trying to feel it out, and he turns back around again. I said, "No." I said, "We're not going to get anybody." I said, "That guy can die from old age and rot behind that door
Right.
before we go kicking in a door on a call like
Exactly.
this." I said, "We're not kicking in a door on anybody like this." And I said, as long as we're talking, we're doing the right thing, as long as he's talking to us. So Ron turns around again, and now he takes another step or two into the hallway. And so now he's closer to these 3 doors that are closed, and he calls out again. He said, "Jerry," he says, "what door are you behind?" And then from behind one of those closed doors, bam! He shoots, and now we got a bullet flying down this hallway at us.
Oh, fuck.
And so Ron is in the center of the hallway. I'm on this side of the hallway. Circus Freak Pete is on this side of the hallway. And so the odds, I mean, you guys know a fatal funnel of fire.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what happens to a bullet. It doesn't go ding, ding, ding. It skims off the wall and flies to the end of that hallway until it hits something. Well, at one end of the hallway is my fat head sticking out here like this. Pete's fat head is on this other side of the hallway. And Ron is right smack in the middle. So the odds of that bullet hitting the one of the 3 of us is almost 100%. So I jump back, and there's a room behind me. And there's something behind me. I could only take 1 step backwards to get into this room to take cover. Pete jumps back into the kitchen that we came in through, and Ron takes the 2 or 3 steps and runs back and jumps into the kitchen with him. Well, right behind those guys is the exit and the escape hatch. And I get on my radio, and I call out, "Hold traffic, shots fired, subject with a rifle." Now, we don't know what kind of gun it is yet, but I'm just trying to put out worst case scenario in case that's the last transmission I could put out. I want responding officers to respond, prepared for what this could be. I mean, if the guy's got a long gun, we got big trouble.
But no one got hit in the hallway with that first shot.
No.
Holy fuck!
None
How
of
did
us
that
got hit.
happen?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Oh God!
There's more to come.
Don't ruin
I'm
the
so
book.
excited.
There's more to come.
It's gut wrenching.
It's like
Yeah.
I don't know.
So they're over there, and I put out, "Hold traffic, shots fired, subject with a rifle." And Ron and Pete are in the kitchen, and the exit's right behind them, and they're like, "Mark, come on, let's go. We got to get out. And I said, "We can't." I said, "We got to contain the threat to the back of this trailer." And then I looked to my right, and I saw windows. And I said, "If he gets to those windows," I said, "he'll kill us before we get to our cars, and he'll kill all the neighbors before we can evacuate them." And as soon as I got through saying that, down at the end of that dark hallway, we hear this bang. And it was the door slamming up against the wall because Jerry had just opened the door, and he was coming out of one of those rooms.
Yeah.
And then we hear these footsteps coming. Boom, 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 boom. So this guy's huge. He's well over 200 pounds, and he's over 6 foot tall, and he's running down this hallway, and nobody can look down the hallway to see
Right.
because they're at the exit. And right across the hall from me, I can't cross that hallway again for fear of taking the next round in the head.
Right.
So I'm staying back as far as I can, and I'm like, "Oh my God, he's going to come out of that hallway. He's going to come out of that hallway with that gun." So I bring my gun up to on target, and I'm so close to the hallway exit that Jerry's going to walk out of in milliseconds. I'm like, oh my God, if he comes out crouched down, like, I don't know how tall this guy is. Maybe he's a midget. or a little person.
Is that politically?
I don't know if that's
well,
okay to say.
Anything else I said?
We're sorry.
And
he's short.
So maybe he's shorter than me. Maybe he's shorter than me, or maybe he's crouched down. Maybe he's crawling. He's making so much noise in that hallway. And I bring my gun up. I was like, if he comes out low, my arms and gun have got the lower half of the hallway cut off, and I cannot see. So I had to bring my gun down so I could see the lower half of that hallway. And as soon as I brought my gun down, out of that darkness comes this gun barrel. And I'm telling you, right, as soon as I saw that gun barrel come out of that hallway, my vision tunneled down, and I was looking through a sight picture about this big. Mm-hmm. And all I can see is this gun barrel coming out of this darkness. And the guy's got it up, out in front of him, and he takes one step into that room. And I turn on my flashlight on my gun. That's how dark the environment is.
Now, this is daytime, right?
It's 10:30 in the morning.
So it's not like it's
but
fucking
he's got all the lights off.
midnight.
Yeah,
It's a
and it's
fucking
just,
cave
it's a
for this,
cave. It
yeah.
is. It's like fighting in a cave. And so I flipped on my flashlight, and as soon as I saw the gun, my vision tunneled down, and I immediately scream out my police challenge, just like we've done a million times on the range, right?
Right. That's what
And
you're trained, right?
Yeah, and so my gun's down here, and everything goes into slow motion, and I'm trying to pick my gun up to get it on target, and I'm screaming, police, don't move, drop the weapon, drop the weapon, drop the weapon. And I'm trying to get my gun up, and it feels like it weighs a ton, and I just can't get my gun up. Don't have any puns going on there, please. And so I'm like trying to get my gun up, and when he sees my flashlight on my gun turn on, he was basically, so I'm gonna like look at the camera. So he was off on about a 15-degree angle. When he saw that light turn on, he turned, and he immediately trained his gun on me and swung those 15 degrees, and now I'm looking right down the barrel of that gun. And I'm telling you, my vision was so narrowed and so focused that I could see that gun, and I could see like black flecks of carbon on that gun. I could see that gun sight, and beyond that gun sight, I saw this man's insane looking, rage-filled face. And like, I've seen thousands of angry people in this job, but I've never seen rage on a person's face like I did on that man's face that day. I did I tried to describe it to an artist friend of mine of what his face looked like and his eyes and everything. And she did the book cover for me, and that's what the man's face looked like. That's, when I see that, it just, it mortifies me to see it again and again. So anyway, I'm trying to get my gun up on target, and he swings those few degrees, and now he's like right on target. I'm looking down the barrel of the gun, and I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to shoot, he's going to shoot, he's going to shoot. And I'm still getting my gun up to about here. And I'm looking down the barrel of his gun, and I see his face in that vision tunnel that I have. And as I'm looking down the barrel of his gun, trying to get my gun up on target, he screams at us one more time. He screams at me, and he says, "You're going to fucking die." And bam! He shoots. And I didn't wear glasses back then, so something hits me in my right eye, and in the same millisecond, my face gets engulfed in this fireball of the muzzle. And I said, oh my God, I just took a headshot. So my right eye is slammed shut. I got something in my right eye. And I start falling backwards, and then I start pulling the trigger on my gun. And so when I pulled the trigger on my gun, I'm expecting gaboom, gaboom. Because, I mean, we fired our guns on the range thousands and thousands of times. And that's what it sounds like. And that's with hearing protection on.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is just going to be thunderous, really loud. Well, it sounded exactly like this. It was just this loud. I'm pulling the trigger on my gun, and it goes like this. It makes this noise. Pop, 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 pop. And I'm thinking, you Barney Fife moronic asshole, you forgot to load a bullet in your gun, and you didn't put one up from the magazine.
You didn't put one in the pipe.
You didn't put one in the pipe, and you're firing out an empty chamber, you moron. You're dying. You just took a headshot, and you're going to be found dead with an empty gun chamber. So I'm pulling the trigger, and I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, this can't get any worse. So I'm falling backwards. And as I start to fall backwards, in my vision tunnel, I see these little flecks of light coming in from the right-hand side. And instantly I recognize, oh, cool. At least my partners are smart enough to have a bullet in the chamber. And those are muzzle flashes. And then I see Jerry start to fall with me in the exact same time. So we're going down like two dominoes in unison.
So he's going backwards.
No, he's going forward.
Oh, he's going forward and you're going backwards.
To me. He's falling towards me, and I can only see through my partially open left eye. My right eye is just like out of the game. And I'm thinking, and he's falling down, and he's coming down with me, and I realize that, okay, my partners are putting him down with their gunfire, and we're going down together in unison like two dominoes. And then I see Jerry's expression change through my vision window here. And it goes from this rage-filled, demonic-looking person, and he changes his expression. And in an instant, without saying a single word, he says a million words to me and a million things. And his expression portrays this to me. He's like, oh, my God, I just made the biggest mistake of my life. And I'm not going to survive it. And I'm sorry. And I just looked at that, and it broke my heart. I was like, you poor guy.
What?
I mean, I was like,
you still feel bad
so
for this motherfucker.
This motherfucker just
Because
popped off rounds at you.
I know, but it was so sad. It was like, oh, my God. I said, I feel so sorry for this guy. Because it was such a heartbreaking scene, man. I mean, like if Sarah McLachlan could have been singing "In the Arms of an Angel" on the background, and would you spend
with an ugly dog?
Yeah,
or
with a dog.
Yeah.
I mean, people would send $19.95 a month to support and help people like this. But I'm not kidding you. It was so sad. I was like, dude, it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. From the scariest thing I've ever seen to the saddest thing in seconds. But the other thing is he's falling down, and he won't take that gun barrel off of me. And I'm like, he's going to get another round off. And he won't take that gun off of me, even though he's got this sad look. I was like, he's going to pop another round off. I've already thinking I got one in my face. I'm not going to survive a second round. And he's going down with me at the same time. And then I fall, and I hit the ground. Well, there was something behind me. That's why I couldn't back up into the room anymore. And as I fall, Jerry is so close to me that his head falls right between my legs. That's how close we were. Like our guns were almost touching. We were almost muzzle to muzzle. It was nearly a point-blank shootout. And as I fall to the ground, I fall over the coffee table, and the coffee table's here. I can't illustrate this on camera, but between my feet is this coffee table, and Jerry's face smashes on the corner of that coffee table. And we both hit the ground together at the same time, and then I get an excruciating pain in my right hip, and I was like, oh my God, he just got another round off. He must have popped it under my vest. He must have put another one out before he hit the ground, and I just took it in the hip under my vest, and so then all of a sudden, the tiny muzzle flashes that were coming in from my tunneled vision through on the right, just little flicks of light. And then all of a sudden they became bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it took up my whole field of vision. And all I saw was these muzzle flashes coming at me. And it was my partner's gunfire. And I'm looking through my partially open left eye, and all I see is whoa, 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 whoa. And it's like, oh my God, I'm going to get fragged out by friendly fire.
Friendly fire.
So I jump off to the right. And I'm looking through my partially open left eye, and I see that his face has hit that coffee table and shattered it. It was glass, by the way. And I saw something shiny, and I immediately recognized it as his weapon. And so I scream out to my partners. I'm like, ceasefire, he dropped the weapon, he dropped the weapon. And so they immediately quit firing, and I yell out, I'm going cold, which means I'm putting my gun away. And they yell out, covering. And so I holster up, I take out my handcuffs, immediately speed cuff the man, and roll him over on his back. And
Can we take this point? You take a fucking drink, dude.
Yeah,
I need
calm
drink.
down for a second.
I need you
yeah.
to drink. I need to take my blood pressure. Like I'm fucking.
It's a little bit. This room isn't very big, and it just got really small.
Oh Jesus!
Oh, it just turned into a tunnel for
Yeah.
me. You think it's small for you?
I'm like,
It was a tunnel.
I'm
for
with
me.
you on this. On this.
You tell this story, and when you tell it, you're adding so many things to it, and we're talking seconds, right? We are talking like this. Once he came out of that fucking hallway, we're talking.
What was the time? What was I know you and I had talked before. We were Mark and I met up earlier this week. We were at Dylan's, right? Is that what it's called? Shout out to Dylan's out at Lake Pleasant. We'll put a link at the bottom so that people can check it out, where we were breaking bread. But we talked about the time frame. What was the time frame between him coming out to the time that you guys were pretty much basically in a Mexican standoff? You guys were barrel to barrel.
From the time him and I went gun to gun,
Yeah.
less than 6 seconds.
6 seconds
Like
tops.
seconds, yeah. You
Yeah.
tell this, and it seems like, man, it's
That's
so
an
much
eternity,
time.
man.
Well, fuck yeah.
When it goes into slow-mo,
Oh,
your mind sucks in all that detail. And unfortunately, those details come back to visit you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
It's like, and it's haunting. So let me continue.
all right. Whew.
So before you continue, so we've got before we get back to that part, and I don't want to chop it up too much, but what was your morning like that day? Was it because you said it was a Sunday, right? I think you said it was a Sunday. Everybody in this room's work Sundays.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you held over on a
boring,
day shift,
boring
it's
as fuck.
fucking nothing.
Usually lighter.
Nothing's fucking going on Sunday mornings. I don't think fucking first call on the Squawk Bot goes on for fucking 3-4 hours.
Yeah, like
10,
I
8.
said, it was 10:30. That was really the first call that
Yeah.
I remember.
So-
coming out.
So
We just had breakfast. I mean, seriously.
you started at 6 and
We
you were just
started
having breakfast at
6,
10
we had
o'clock.
breakfast, and that was the first hot call.
Yeah. So
like, let's
the
go.
morning, I mean, you were really just pretty much laid back. In the beginning part of your shift was pretty low key.
Yeah.
And by that time, how many years did you have on?
I was on over 4 years at that time with Glendale. I'm sorry. Gotta edit that.
So, so with the department that you were on at the time, you had that on, and it's quiet. I'm assuming 4 years. You probably are relatively not maybe the most senior squad because you're working Sundays, obviously.
Right.
But you're seasoned guys. You're
Yeah.
salty. No issues with that. So you're pretty much 4 years into it, and almost all of your 4 years, I'm assuming, was every Sunday was the
Graveyards.
same.
Well, I was on graveyards. This was my first chance to really go to a day shift, and me and my best friend Pete Ronan, that was on that call with me, we decided, you know what, man, we're like hard chargers, dude, and that's me being more than generous with an assessment of my abilities, I'm sure. But I love the hot calls, man. I was in the hot calls.
But this didn't come out as a hot call, right?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, it
Yeah,
did? It came out as a hot call?
It came out as a hot call. But we transitioned to day shift because we thought, you know what, let's try to slow down because things are getting hectic, man. Let's see what a slow shift on. So when we first had the opportunity to get a one weekend day off, which was
Saturday.
we're like, you know what, let's take it and let's get over there and try a day shift.
Yeah.
And figuring things are going to be slow and sleepy.
And
so
it
we
was
go to
anything
this.
but slow and
Yeah.
sleepy.
So back to the call. We fall to the ground and they cover me. I'm going cold. They say covering. I speed cuff him. I flip him over and put him on his back. And I stand up and my partner Pete looks at me and he says to the other officer, he says, "Ron, get Mark outside. He's been shot. Well, I can't see out of my right eye. And so I get on the radio and I put out 998-999.
Which is...
In our police vernacular, that 998 call means I've been in a shooting, or it's an officer-involved shooting. 999 means I'm hit and I need emergency help.
Send fucking everybody.
Yeah, I need medical.
Right.
Right.
Triple
now.
nine is
Yeah, everybody. Come
everybody.
rushing.
Even exterior
Yes. Agencies
agencies
will
are coming
to
in.
help. So I'm staggering out into the daylight onto the porch through the kitchen where we entered from, and Ron goes out there on the porch with me. And I'm thinking that my head is just like blown apart. And so I'm looking at Ron, and Ron looks at me. And I want him to give me an assessment, but I'm not saying that. I'm just standing there.
Say something.
Looking like this,
Say
probably.
something.
Yeah. And Ron's looking at me with the same expression. And he's not saying anything, and I'm not saying anything. And it seemed like it went
Which is
on.
the worst.
Yeah, it seemed like
Say something.
I think,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I must be so bad that
So-
Ron can't say anything
Right.
about how ugly I look right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so finally I scream at him. I'm like, what? And Ron just answers back and he says, I don't see anything. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Look at my fucking face. And he's like, yeah, Mark. He says, I don't see anything. He said, I think he missed you.
No fucking way.
Yeah, and I was like, what are you talking about? I said, look at how'd I get this blood all over me? And so Ron says, I think it's his blood, Mark. And I was like, no. So I remember then I was like, oh, I know where the blood's from. When I fell to the ground, he must have got that extra round off. It probably blew up through my vest. I'm thinking I got a round under my vest. And so I said, no, look, he got one under my vest. So I ripped my shirt up and I put my vest up. And now all the neighbors are coming out.
Yeah.
And they see an officer ripping his clothes off. And they're like, what is going on over
Yeah.
here? What kind of a,
It's not
musical
their-
candygram is this going on? So, stripping officer. So anyway, so I ripped my shirt up. And he looks me over and he says, I don't see anything, Mark. I think he missed you. Well, we don't have time to thank our lucky stars. So we run back into the kitchen. And Pete's standing over the Jerry, and Pete says, "Who's got a pocket mask, a CPR pocket mask?"
No one.
And I said, "I do." So I was an EMT before, and I said, so I grabbed my pocket mask, and Pete, again, the left-handed circus freak that he is, an opportunist, he says, "Good, because I got chest." Well, by default, he's going to do chest compressions. That means I have to go mouth to mouth on this guy.
Oh.
So I'm like, all right. So I go down and I try to tip his airway back, and I try to ventilate into him through the mask, and I can't get an airway. So I got to reposition his head again and again. And finally I get an airway, and I had to like mash his cheeks up into the mask. I had to hold his cheeks, and he's a super overweight guy. And it's the only way I could get a clean airway on that pocket mask. So I mashed his cheeks up in there, and I tip his head back, and I ventilate into him, and I get 2 good ventilations. I see his chest rise and fall. And then Pete starts chest compressions, and it's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. He said, breathe. So I had to maintain the airway. I had to keep his head tilted back. And so I had his head between my knees, tipping it back and ventilating down into him. So my face is like right down there on his face. And Pete starts doing these chest compressions, and now I got so much adrenaline flowing, and I'm mad because the guy just tried to blow my head off. And I'm screaming at him. I'm like, "Why did you do that? You didn't have to do that, man. It didn't have to go that way." And then Pete yells out, he's done with his chest compressions, and he's like, "Breathe." And I put 2 more ventilations into him, and then he's doing his cycles, and then I'm looking up at Pete, and I'm like, "Why did he do that, Pete? He didn't have to do that." He says, "I don't know, man. Breathe." So he's done with his 10 again, so I get 2 more ventilations into him. And every time he does these chest compressions, I noticed that. So Jerry wasn't wearing a shirt, and every time he does a chest compression, and I'm like this far away from it, I see these little holes in the front of him, about the biggest round of diameter as a pencil. Every time Pete does the chest compression, you see this little cylinder of meat.
Oh.
It's like a little skin cap, and then a little strip of meat down below it, and then below that is just blood pushing out of it. And he does a compression, and it's like, and every time it does, it splatters up in my face. And like I said, I didn't wear glasses back then, so this getting in my eyes and splattering all over my face. And he's doing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. Breathe. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and we're quickly getting exhausted. I mean, our adrenaline is hopping.
Yeah.
And so all this blood and guts are splattering up in my face, and I'm smelling the alcohol on Jerry's breath every time I breathe, and he exhales back out. And I'm just getting covered in this stuff. And so I remember those smells and that alcohol smell and the smell of that blood and everything splattering up in my face. And I can't get off it. I mean, I got to stick right in it. I got to stay right there on top of Jerry, ventilating into him. Now we're trying to save this man who just tried to murder me. And so fire's on the way. Our backup starts showing. And, you know, I don't blame them, but nobody wanted to come in and tap me out and say, hey, let me take over ventilation.
Yeah, nobody's going to step up to
Nobody
that.
wants that.
No,
Nobody
nobody going
wants
to step
that.
up to
Nope.
So Pete's stuck doing chest compressions. He's covered in blood splatter. I got it all over my face, and I'm continuing to do ventilations. And you know, fire responded really fast, but it seemed like a week before they got here. And so we hear them coming up the sidewalk there, their big heavy fire boots. And I scream out to them, I'm like, get in here, fire! And they're like, we're coming.
Yeah. Well, they got to carry all the fucking
they got all their
suitcases
baggage.
and shit. And
So they come
cool.
in and they see me and they're like, we got it. And I said, I'm not stopping until you take him. So Pete continues the compressions, splattering up in my face. And I'm doing ventilations. And so finally they get their gear next to me and they push me out of the way. They're like, we got it. I said, all right. And I come away from there, and I'm not kidding you. I was so covered in sweat. Like my socks and underwear and pants were just wet, like I'd been hit with a garden hose. I was covered in sweat. And so I go staggering out of there, and then I realized, I said, our sergeant had come on scene. And I realized I'd recorded it all. And I was like, oh, cool. Because I wanted not just my word.
Right.
I wanted that evidence of this is what happened. And I got it all on tape. And so not only is it going to be my word in the report as to what this man tried to do to me and us, but I got a recorded evidence of it. And so I immediately ripped my pocket tape recorder out and I ran over to the supervisor and I said, Sarge, I said, I got it. I said, I got it all on tape. He's like, all right, take it easy, man. Are you all right? All right. And I mean, I must have been fanatical.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
I was just amped up with adrenaline. It wasn't coming off. And so I'm trembling, and I yanked the tape recorder out, the cassette recorder out, the micro recorder. And I said, here. I said, I got it all on tape. He said, all right, man, I got it. I said, are you okay? Come on outside. Let's try to calm you down. And that was the end of the shooting. So
Well, I'm tired.
Oh,
yeah, I'm tired.
I'm ready to
Ay,
go ahead
ay,
and call
ay.
it a day and try to do this another time.
oh,
Who has a lighter?
motherfucker. Oh.
Somebody's got a lighter.
I need a lighter.
Somebody's got a.
Oh, yeah.
So,
If anyone out there could help us right now,
yeah, I don't know what to
we'd
say.
appreciate it because
I'm dripping in sweat right now.
holy
And
shit, I think I've urinated myself.
yeah.
Okay.
So, so the shooting, if you didn't listen to the fucking story and you're not fucked up, imagine Mark's situation. So my question to you is, and I'm sure that the people who are watching this are going to want to know, how the fuck did he miss you?
Okay.
That's my question, because I know people are listening like, what the fuck happened to Bullet? Where'd the Bullet? You're 6 seconds in a time span of 6 seconds. You gave us the description about how far away you were, pretty much muzzle to muzzle. How the fuck did this guy miss you?
Yeah.
Especially you illuminating. I mean, he gave him a prime target.
Yeah, all he saw was me. And like I said, our guns were almost touching. Like, I was so far down the muzzle of that gun, it's like, that's all I saw was that in his eyes. Granted, I had tunnel vision. So when I went back to the debrief, and internal affairs came in to do the shooting investigation, the
Right.
walkthrough, exactly. They asked me, did you shoot? And I said, out of embarrassment and out of shame, I said, I don't think so. I don't think so. And they're like, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure I didn't shoot. And So the attorney came in at that point, the union rep attorney, and he asked me the same thing. And he said, "Are you sure you didn't shoot?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I didn't shoot at all." And I was embarrassed. I mean, I was humiliated.
Well, yeah.
Because that was a shooting.
Yeah, because
that's the day to shoot when you have a shooting.
Right.
Is when
Right.
you're being shot in
You're
the face.
thinking you don't have any in the pipe. You think no rounds were
So I was
fired.
embarrassed to admit that.
Yeah.
So the attorney said, the union attorney says, "Dude, take your magazine out of your gun and look." So I slid the magazine out, and I was in disbelief. I said, "Oh my God." I said, I did shoot. I said, "There's 6 rounds missing."
Ugh.
And she said, "Yeah, so you did shoot." And I'm thinking, how? I said, "I didn't hear a single round go off. I didn't feel my gun kicking. I didn't see the big muzzle flash." Granted, I was only one-eyed Molly at the time, you know. But I'm like, I still didn't. I was in disbelief that I had even fired that gun because I didn't hear nothing go off. So in the investigation, and this came out months and months later, over 7 months to be exact, before I got the results. But what the detectives had told me through the grapevine, I suppose, was that when Jerry was down in his dark bedroom and he heard a police officer, the only person talking was Ron Solo. So he thought there was one officer in the house. And he didn't realize there was 3 of us in there. And so he was taunting us, trying to get that officer to come into that door. Well, when he quickly got his revolver and loaded it up, in his dresser drawer was his ammunition, and he loaded that up. And inside of that dresser drawer were various types of ammunition.
It's like a
various-
hodgepodge of
various
just-
calibers. So he's down there trying to speed load in the dark, and he loads it up, and then he slams that revolver shut, and all of those cylinders roll together. And then he took a crouched down position behind his bed for cover, and he hid behind that bed. And when he assumed, the detectives assumed that when Ron was close enough to that door, and when he called out and said, "What door are you behind?"
Oh.
Yeah.
He thought Ron was right outside of his bedroom door. So he shot right where Ron's face would have been had he seen that. I almost think that the lighting from down the hallway shadowed Ron's feet and made him think that he was right outside, like the shadows hit the door. That's my assumptions. But anyway, so he fired through that doorway, and it went right through where Ron's face would have been. But because Ron was down the hallway, it zinged up and went right over the top of where Ron's head was and lodged in the ceiling up above Ron's head.
Fuck.
So had he taken another couple steps into that hallway,
He would have
Ron
taken
would have
it.
taken the headshot.
Yeah.
And and then when we didn't come in after him after the gunfight started, he flung that door open and ran down that hallway and made his charge at us, screaming at us, "You're gonna die! You're gonna fucking die!" And then when he saw that light come on my gun, he made those few degree turns, and he's like had me right in his sights, and he screamed it one more time. He's like, "You're gonna fucking die!" And boom, he fired it, and then that cylinder rolled up to fire, and Jerry had accidentally loaded a blank
Oh,
out of his dresser drawer.
fuck.
Holy
So
shit.
he had all those live rounds except that one round that came up when the cylinder was right down my face. And boom, he hit. So he shot me, and he shot me right in the eye. But what hit me in the right eye was the wadding and from that blank, and then the fireball hit me in the face, and it knocked me backwards. So, and had he gotten another round off as he was following me down, had he squeezed that trigger one more time, another live round would have came out and would have maybe hit me in the face or got under my vest like I had feared had happened. Had he gotten one more squeeze on that trigger pull, had my partners not put him down with their gunfire, pushing him down towards me, he would have killed me for sure.
Yeah. And you popped off
crazy.
6 rounds, right?
I did, but because not only did in a traumatic event like that, and I didn't know this, but not only does your vision tunnel down, as I learned the hard way, but also your hearing and your auxiliary senses shut down.
Yeah, that's what
And
my
those-
doctor
Those
said.
auxiliary senses, one of them is your hearing. So if you were to put your fingers in your ears, that's exactly what it sounded like. It was like. So my gun was functioning. I wasn't the Barney Fife officer that I thought I was.
Oh,
You
good
had one in the
job.
pipe.
So I had a gun. I had a bullet in the chamber like I'm supposed to, like a good boy. And I was firing, and I was pulling it so fast that my first 6 rounds hit him center mass right in the heart. And they said that had he actually been even in an operating room, they wouldn't have been able to save him
Yeah.
because my first round hit his heart and exploded Jerry's heart. And Jerry was fatal at that point. And my partner's gunfire, because they were right on top of him, and he was in the inertia motion towards me, he was going down,
Yeah.
and he was coming towards me. Yeah, so I thank God that that's how that cylinder loaded up, that when he shut that cylinder, that the first live round missed Ron, that the second round was the blank round that he accidentally reached into that dark dresser drawer and slammed that into that chamber. And just, can you imagine the odds of that?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
That being the round,
Yeah.
the first round missing Ron, the second round was the one that was going to be point blank and hitting me right in the face.
Yeah.
And that, thank God, that I do every day was the blank round.
So
And if he wanted to just scare us and attack us with blank rounds, he had plenty of blank rounds in there. He could have had all blanks in there.
he just didn't know. He just
Yeah.
So that's why they assumed that it was he inadvertently loaded that blank round. Well, I don't think it was inadvertent. I think it was God Almighty like blinded that man and rolled that round over there as he's reaching into that dresser. So that's just my personal religious view, and I'm never coming off of that.
Yeah.
Never.
So like I said earlier in the week, we had talked about that day in particular. So we know what happens with the shooting. We know how it ends up. How long after that shooting, and what occurred during that in that day, did you start experiencing the effects of acute stress from that point?
So
Because you said there was some significance that had occurred within the state. I'll just say the state.
Yeah. So it was a bloody day for law enforcement in Arizona. A short time before our shooting occurred, DPS had actually gotten in a shooting, and they shot a guy. And I don't recall the details of that. And then we got in our shooting. And then a few hours later, Phoenix got into a shooting where 3 of their officers unfortunately did get shot, and 2 of them didn't survive. And, God rest their souls, it was Officer White and Officer Wolf. And they both passed away from their shooting. And so within days, we're going to these funerals of these 2 officers.
Yeah.
And we've got like a camaraderie with these guys. You know how it is anyway. But because we were in a shooting that day, so me and my partner Pete, we're in our patrol car in the long funeral procession, and we're just bawling our guts out, and the community support was phenomenal.
Hold
for
on.
those guys.
So now, you've been involved in a shooting, and now you're going to a funeral for
Yeah.
officers that were killed
Yeah.
on the same day you were involved in a shooting.
Yes, and so me and Pete are just
Why did you
crying.
think that was a good idea?
I don't even know, but we just had such a new sense of camaraderie with this other agency, this Phoenix Police Department, because me and Pete both recognized, man, this could have been us.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because
And
that's what you
so-
do.
Yeah,
You're
and
going
so-
to support.
And I don't go to other agencies' funerals on average.
Yeah.
I normally don't. But because of that event, and it happened to us, and we saw their family and all their devastated comrades, we're like, man, this was so close. It was such a close scenario to what we had unfolded. But, they got drawn into other circumstances of their call. But
And that's I think, not to take anything away from the officers that were killed, because we've talked about that in the past about, that's the ultimate sacrifice.
absolutely.
Right.
But think about that for a second. Here's a guy who was involved in a shooting, and he takes out his own traumatic event to go deal with the loss of the officers, which is noble. I'm not going to say it's not, and I probably would have done the same thing. but that's why we end up in the situation we're in, because we will put ourselves way so far behind than dealing with our own thing.
I wasn't looking at self-care at all, and I had no idea. So my first symptom of PTSD was that night when I got home and all the dust had settled from all the shootings and chaos in the valley, and it's all over the news, and I mean and I respectfully say they took all of that press away from us. Otherwise, the press would have been on us like magnets, or the DPS officers, because you know how they are on a shooting, and they're doing their job. But those two poor officers that were fatally wounded drew all that press coverage away from us, and had it not been, it would have probably been even worse. But so that night, when I come home, and all that news coverage is happening, and it's almost like a reenactment of what I had went through, and I'm still trying to process that. So I lay down, asleep, and I'm laying there, and I felt like I just closed my eyes, but I must have drifted off to sleep. And as soon as I closed my eyes, bam! I heard this bang, and I'm gonna tell you, it was so loud that I felt like it physically shook me in my bed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. And I thought, that's so. I jumped out of bed and I said, man, the trash can must have just got knocked down by a dust devil or something, or there's a monsoon going on. And I run over to the window and I look outside, and there's no wind blowing. The trash can is sitting right there. And then it dawned on me, oh, I just had a nightmare.
A night terror.
About that, about the shooting. I said, yeah, that's right, because I was dreaming, and I did see that gun go off in my face. Well, unfortunately, every time, and not every day now, but 5 out of 7 days, that gun blowing up in my face, and that seeing Jerry shooting me in the face has woke me up every day since then, and that was over 14 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my
Did you
unwanted alarm clock.
Did you go back to patrol? Did you go back to the streets?
Yeah, I took the required
3 days.
3 days off, and I was back on the street.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though.
Yeah, and see, I didn't know what was transpiring. I didn't know what ball had started in motion, what snowball was rolling downhill, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But every night, I would try to sleep, and bang! Man, right when I got into sleep, bang! That gun was going off. And I'd see that flash, and I'd see Jerry, or I'd see some aspect of that shooting unfolding, and it was impossible for me to sleep. So months into this, actually within a few short weeks into this, I was so jumpy on the street, like somebody would pull their license out to show me something, and I was overreacting.
Hypervigilant.
Yeah, I was hypervigilant. I was on edge. I couldn't get my adrenaline to come down at all.
Did you tell anybody?
No, because I didn't know. I just thought, well, it's natural. Why wouldn't it be? I mean, why wouldn't you have dreams about it?
Well, yeah.
And so I didn't know the symptoms of PTSD. And I had a really callous attitude about the mental health field. I was like, stuff doesn't work. It's a charlatan.
Baloney.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need that. My dad took me camping. I mean, that's everyone's
Nobody touched me
diagnosis,
dirty
right?
in my bum.
Yeah, and I've never been assaulted or anything. So I'm thinking, I had a great childhood. I had great parents. And I have a beautiful family. And I was like, why? I'm just having bad dreams. I'm having bad dreams. And sleep deprivation kicked in, and it started getting worse and worse and worse. But what I did notice was I was calling in sick one day a week at least.
And you never did that before?
No. Or I would use comp time. Man, what can I do to get off that fourth day of patrol, my
not
fourth
go to
10-hour
work.
day?
Yeah.
Anything I could do, I'd use my vacation time. I'd do whatever I could, because I couldn't handle 4 days of duty in a row. I was freaking out bad. And my sleep was getting worse and worse and worse, and less and less and less. Well, that shooting happened in August, and by January, I felt this pressure building inside of my head and inside of my face, and it was so extreme. It literally felt like my head was filling with blood, and I had all of this pressure in my head. And I started having these fleeting thoughts of, man, I just gotta get a hole in my face to relieve this pressure. And it made no logical sense to me, but I said, that's the only way. I just got to get this pressure relieved in my face, and I'm sure once I get this pressure relieved out of my face, then I'll be able to sleep right. And so I was blacking out. I was having long blackout periods, and I would come to and I'd be like, what am I doing here? I mean, I would be in places like I had no idea. And so I came through from one of these blackouts. And when I came to, I was in my bathroom mirror and I had my gun in my face and I was going to shoot a hole in my face to relieve that pressure. And I thought, yeah, this would work. This is going to make all this pressure go away in my head. And I came out of that blackout or episode, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, what are you doing, man? And it scared me. I saw myself in the mirror with a gun in my face, getting ready to pop a hole in my face. And I was like, I holstered my gun up. I said, I'm going to the hospital, man. I got to get some serious sleeping meds. And so I rushed into urgent care because I tried all this over-the-counter stuff. I tried drinking myself into a stupor to sleep. Nothing would keep me down. And I went in, and I crossed the path of a guardian angel, and it happened to be the doctor that just so happened to take that call. She was next up, and they called my name, and I went back, and they said, what's happening? And they must have been like,
Yeah.
this guy's
Fuck,
nuts.
what the fuck wrong with this guy?
Holy shit.
This guy's a fucking train wreck.
Crazy, yeah. So, and so the nurse med tech runs out and she gets the doctor in, and the doctor comes in and says, "Tell me what's going on." See, I was in a shooting, a few months ago, and I can't sleep, and I'm hallucinating. I'm seeing this guy, and he's like walking through my house, and it's scaring the shit out of me, to be honest with you. And I can't sleep because every time I close my eyes to sleep, boom, this gun's going off in my face. And so
It's like a loop. Dave talks about that.
yeah.
It's just a loop. It keeps
wouldn't
going.
stop. It was a movie I couldn't stop. I often said that to my doctors. And this doctor said to me, says, "Well, you just crossed the right path, friend, because my brother just got back from Afghanistan, and he just tried to kill himself, and he's got post-traumatic stress disorder, and I think that's what you have. And I'm going to get you in touch with some of the best medical professionals to try to help you with this." And I said, no. I cut her off. I said, I don't want PTSD. I said, don't put that in my file.
Yeah.
And
Why?
says,
Why? Before you go further, why?
I said, I don't want that.
Why though?
And because I didn't want that stigma.
Right.
And she said to me, she said, nobody wants it, Mark. Nobody wants that. She said, but I believe you have it, and I'm going to put you in touch with some mental health professionals, and they're going to help you. And I said, I don't want that. I said, don't put that in. I said, don't tell my department that I got post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, yeah.
She said, I'm giving you a
That's
3-day pass.
That's the end of it.
That's the end all be all.
Yeah.
You don't want to be.
I'm giving you a 3-day work excuse. I said, okay. I said, but what I really want is those sleeping pills. I said, I want something that's going to knock me out like a tranquilizer.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm going to give you what you want. She says, but I'm also giving you some referrals, and you go see these guys. And she did. She put me into the mental health field that I was so scrupulous, so skeptical of. And that started my mental health care. Those doctors didn't work out for me because guess what they told me?
What's that?
You
Just
got
don't think about it.
stress disorder.
Oh, I was like, what did they
said,
tell
man,
you?
you got post-traumatic stress disorder. You can't be on the street. And I said, I'm never coming to see you again.
Oh.
And so I went to another doctor and hoping they were going to say, yeah, you just need some sleeping pills. But guess what they said?
Yeah.
You got post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, exactly.
So I quit seeing those doctors. And I'd go to another doctor and another doctor and another doctor. And they were all concluding the
Hey,
same
dumb
thing.
fuck.
Yeah.
Hey, dumb fuck.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
all
not
I
a
can
doctor,
say.
but I
That's
think
all
you have
can say to
PTSD.
that.
So,
That's true.
with that, because you ignored it, because I did the same thing. I think we all did in this room. We don't want that title.
Oh, no.
Because we're stronger than that. And
Yeah.
I think that's a misnomer. But
It is.
part of that, when you're talking about sleeping, like I didn't sleep for probably 11 months. I mean, I'd have broken sleep. With the screams, I'd wake up and I'd wake up to the screams, and so I started hallucinating.
Yeah.
I'd see people over my shoulder. I'd be like, "What the fuck was that?" And my wife's like looking at me like, "What are you looking at?" And I swear to God, it was as real as us sitting in this room right now.
Absolutely.
And I remember that sense of being alone, right? Because I thought nobody else in the whole fucking world who's in police work ever experiences anything like this.
No, they don't.
That was my thought process.
Mine too.
So, although I've said it before and I'll say it again, I wasn't suicidal. What did you have that came with that? The suicidal thoughts.
So at first I didn't even think I was suicidal. I was like, oh, I'm not suicidal. I'm just having bad dreams. And who wouldn't have bad dreams? Isn't that normal?
You were just trying to put a bullet
I was
in
just trying to relieve
the
this pressure in my face.
Yeah, I understand
But
that.
these blackout episodes, and I was like, well, maybe it's just sleep deprivation. Well, what didn't get covered in the sleep deprivation was the fact that I was seeing Jerry. I would see a flash of something. I was seeing all kinds of stuff. I was seeing animals. Hawks were flying down at me. Coyotes were coming out of nowhere. I mean, I was all out. I was quickly becoming crazy.
No sleep, man. That will
sleep
make
deprivation
you nuts.
you'll see some hallucinations.
That's the worst, man.
So, but when Jerry walked into my living room as I was sitting there, and he walked across that living room, and when he got close enough, I could smell Jerry. I could smell that alcohol, and I could smell that blood on him again. And he just got closer and closer, and his face was right in my face. And then I could feel the heat radiating off of Jerry's face. He was so close to me that I could feel the heat from Jerry's face on mine. Then I knew it was real. And I was just petrified, and I'm sitting there in my living room, and I could feel Jerry's heat and smell Jerry and hear him breathing. And I'm just like, then I knew I had something.
Yeah.
But by then, it was 6 months after the fact, and I just didn't know what was transpiring, and that everything was magnifying, exponentially. Every day it was worse. Every week it was 10 times worse. And I just, I did go to our PD counselor, and I told my supervisor, I said, hey, I'm having bad dreams, man. I'm having bad dreams about the shooting. And, well, okay, let's get you some help. So they sent me to a counselor, and I told the same story to the counselor that I just told you and I just told this podcast audience. And she was not equipped to handle police shootings or post-traumatic stress disorder. So get the right doctor, the right counselor. Going to a counselor doesn't mean you're saved, because this counselor, after I told her that story and told her about the shooting, her first words out of her mouth was, and exactly like this, she said, well, why did you even have your gun out?
Oh my
fuck
God.
no.
I'm like,
Are you fucking
what part of
kidding
the
me?
man shot at us and shot me in the face did you not hear?
Oh my God.
That was her response. And as soon as I heard that, boom!
You
I
shut
shut
down.
down. I was like, I got nothing to say to you except how could I punch you in the face and get away with it? I'm just like, I had nothing to. I immediately locked up and shut down, and I said, I'm never come to see this doctor ever again. I said, if this is counseling, this will never work for me. And so that refortified my idea of counseling. Mental health is not going to help me.
No.
Why did I have my gun out? Are you have you lost your mind?
Yeah.
And so I no faith in mental health. So when I checked into the urgent care months later, all I want is sleeping pills. I know you can't help me.
Right.
That was my thought.
Yeah, because they're not set up for that.
No,
and that's the thing that we argue with all the time, is trying to get doctors who understand what's going on in this world and who's equipped to set up for this. Like we talked about in my podcast, when it came to, they send me to a fucking counselor who said, I can't see you, you need to get meds.
Right.
And that's the problem, because as we learned with Mark, we're going to go, let's go to a fucking police officer funeral. It's the saddest fucking thing I can think of.
Right.
Just below a child's funeral. But trying to get us help is the issue. And hopefully with us doing this, people understand, and maybe somewhere somebody will say, I want to help cops.
It's a good example for to talk about, to hear Mark's story and listen to how shitty it was, and how shitty that stupid counselor was to say that to you, and realize, well, maybe this is why officers are shooting themselves,
Right.
because There's nowhere to go.
There's not
You
for
got
us.
this dumb bitch saying that to you, and so yeah, that answers a lot of questions on why officers are killing themselves.
Yeah, and it's the highest. This last year was the highest. We actually had more officers kill themselves than being killed in the line of duty. So I know Tanya and I had talked before, and maybe she forgot, so I'll ask the question. How did you get from all of the shit that you've just told us to the book, Headshot? How did you finally get to the point where you say, you know, I'm going to fucking write a book about all the shit that just occurred?
Here's how.
And how long did it take to get to that point?
Here's how. So, doctor to doctor, telling me the 4 letters I don't want to hear, PTSD. My mental health was going rapidly downhill. The department found out, and because they're like, why are you taking all this time off? Why are you getting doctor's excuses to not come? HIPAA laws weren't even in effect back then.
Oh.
That's years ago,
Right.
14 more years ago. And so they found out, these doctors are saying Mark's got a mental health issue. You got to go home. You can't be on the streets like this. And I tried, and in fairness, they did the right thing. I should not have been on the street trying to police the community and help people because I needed help. So I got sent home, and I started using the remainder of the vacation balances I had. Then my comrades, like the amazing people that police officers are, they said, well, hey, Mark's not getting paid. He's home without pay, man. Let's donate vacation time to Mark. Let's help Mark. And, I had even staff was drumming that up. And I was like, no. They did it a couple of times, and I said, I'm not taking any more of that. I said, because these guys, they earned that. That's theirs for their family and for their health. I said, I'm not taking from my brothers and sisters. I'm not doing it again. I said, so quit. Stop that campaign.
Right.
And a lieutenant there that I referred in my book, Lieutenant Wolfson, he's like, Mark, there's people that want to help you.
Yeah.
And I said, I understand that, sir. I said, but I'll tell you this. I said, it's not their
burden.
It's not their burden. And I said, it's not their cross to bear. I said, if anyone's to take care of me, I said, maybe the department should.
Amen.
Shut
Fuck yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
That seems obvious.
And he said, well, this is what we have in place, They're trying to donate time to you. I said, I'm not taking it. And so I sat home without pay for Then they sent me a letter that said, hey, an official thing. And I don't even think it came from the department. I actually think it came from HR.
Yeah, it came from the city.
Or risk
The city,
management.
of
Yeah.
course.
Somebody. And they said, you're on FMLA now, and you've got 1 year to get medical clearance, or you're going to be terminated. And so in the midst of the prefaces of my care, then I just felt completely isolated. I was ashamed on several fronts. One, I was first ashamed that I didn't think I had bullets in my gun. Then I was ashamed that I put out a 999.
What?
I was. I don't even reference this in my book, so this is cutting edge.
Yeah.
On podcast.
Unfiltered.
Unfiltered. I was embarrassed that I put out a 999 because I thought I had got shot in the head. I thought I'd taken around right in my eye, and when it came out that I didn't, then I was humiliated that I put out an unnecessary emergency call.
Oh my gosh.
That's just
Wow.
that's where my mind went.
Yeah.
I was embarrassed that I put out a 999, and I didn't actually have a round in me. I wasn't actually hit. And so one of the dispatchers, an angel, great friend of mine, and she asked me, she said, Mark, did you put out a 999? And I said, no, I didn't. She said, are you sure? I said, no, I didn't put out a 999.
Oh.
No.
And she doesn't miss a beat. She knew what I put out over that radio.
Right.
She knew.
Yeah.
She knew, and she put it out she broadcast it again that way for responding officers. And but I was humiliated that I put out a 999 thinking I'd gotten shot when I actually didn't.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so that's another guilt bearer, another guilt cross I was dragging along with me through this procession, and everything was compounding. And as the snowball grew bigger and bigger, as I went further down that hill, it was just like, oh my gosh, and I did this, and I told everybody I didn't even shoot my gun when actually I did, and I didn't think I did. So it's just all kinds of lunacy, you know.
I'm sure you've had a ton of officers. Your officers there tried to. You told them that, right? At some point, you told your officers that were there with you. You know, you were embarrassed about that.
No.
You never told anybody?
This is the first time I've ever said
So
that. To anybody.
Really?
Yeah,
Are you
I am.
are you past that embarrassment now, knowing that the belief system that you had? I mean, clearly,
I think that's
you
asinine that you would think that.
It is asinine. But T, I'm gonna tell you something.
It's okay, motherfucker.
I'm gonna tell you
like what
something.
you just.
I mean,
Why would you not kick out the 999? I guess is you've already got shots fired at you.
I would. I mean, I'd put out a 998 again for sure. But when I said, 999, I'm thinking, I got a round in my bloody, ugly face. I mean, look at me. I'm beautiful. You don't get this pretty with a bullet in your head. And it's not a good plastic surgeon or good clean living.
There is not one officer that
probably
could hear
wouldn't
that
have. I
say
know.
any different.
I mean, we have officers that.
But okay,
no
so
one's
that
gonna
was in
judge
my
you.
psyche. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe maybe I had an ego, maybe I had pride, but I knew it was a mistake in the long term of it because the guy actually didn't shoot me. But that's one of those things. It's a small pebble in your shoe.
Just a nugget that
It's
stays
a pebble
with you,
in your
right?
shoe, but when you walk 40 miles with that little grain, that little pebble in your shoe, it's going to wear a hole through your foot, and you're going to be limping at the end of 40 miles. And I've walked that walk, and I've had that, along with a million other pebbles. Small, insignificant, stupid data. But it eats away at you step after step after step after step, and it wears you down, and then you wonder why, hey, I can't walk anymore. Because of all these little things. Because when it's in this laboratory called our brain,
right,
and you have all your other PTSD symptoms in there, your depression, your anxiety, your fear, your hypervigilance, your activation of senses of startle effect and smell. Like I couldn't eat a piece of food. I couldn't eat meat because it had that juice in it, and it reminded me of the blood and the guts coming up out of Jerry's chest. Okay. And I would literally gag. And then the medications they were giving me, which I won't mention because I don't want lawsuits coming against these big pharmaceuticals coming after me, but I'm going to tell you, that was a nightmare in and of itself. And it compounded all these little grains of sand, these little pebbles in my shoe, and it just magnifies them to where it's a rock in your shoe. Now it's a boulder. Now it's ripping your legs off with each step you take. And it compounds it. And that's PTSD.
Yeah.
T, and you know that. And you know that. Because you walked that walk with me, Fran.
I do. And I'm there with you when you say you were ashamed of that. Fuck.
Yeah,
Let that go. Let that go.
I have, but I'm just telling you, that's my history.
I know.
That's a hurdle that my godsend, when I finally got into some great counseling, when I finally got with a real therapist, when I finally got with a real psychologist who went through each of my medications, and they're like, Mark, do you realize that this medication that they had you on for so long and so strong of a dose is giving you tremors in your hand,
which you
and
still
giving you
have.
muscle twitches.
Still have tremors, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when I get real activated, you'll see me like do my flip back like that, and that's the resonance of that gunshot going off in my face, because that's exactly what happened. That's the motion I had. And there were times when I was heavy on these certain medications that I would sit on my couch. I would wake up flipping back like I was having a seizure.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, that's because this medication was designed to prevent seizure. Guess what one of the side effects are?
Seizures, yeah.
Hand tremor. Yeah, it causes your muscles to lock up. It causes your jaw to lock up. There was a point in my care when I was on this medication that it felt like there was somebody pushing a steel rod underneath my chin. and it cramped my tongue up and my jaw up so bad. But I felt it right in there. I would try to eat something, and my mouth was so exhausted. I would like put food in my mouth, and I would be able to chew twice, and then my mouth would hang open from exhaustion. I would put my hand in front of my mouth out of humiliation while I'm sitting there trying to eat dinner with my wife. I'm just mortified at how grotesque I must look with this stuff hanging out of my mouth. And one of the medications I had on, I was like, you talked about drooling.
Yeah.
I would open my mouth and I was just, like, dude, don't drool.
Yeah.
Like, I went to a football game, like, with some of the squad and some of our members. There was like our annual event out, and one of the sergeants there is a good friend of mine, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, dude, what are you doing? He said, don't drool. And I didn't even realize it. I tried passing it off like, yeah. But yeah. I knew what it was.
It's real shit.
I knew what it was. And he's just thought I was being goofy, like purposely drooling.
Well, yeah.
Like it was a joke. And I was like, yeah. I tried passing it off. And I'm sure he's forgotten about it. I hope to God. But it's just one of those things. It's one of those side effects of those meds that they put you on. And it's a chemical experiment. It's the medical practice, and I'm gonna tell you, folks, they're practicing. They're practicing on you, and they have to. They have to try to find what chemical will work for you, what chemical won't work for you. And as they're bringing one on board, oh, that's not enough. Let's give them a bigger dose. That's not helping. Let's give them a bigger dose. That's not helping. Give them a bigger dose. You know what? This isn't working. Now the side effects of that medication have taken you, and it's not helping you. Let's get you off of that. Let's slowly wean you down off of this medication. Well, we can't leave them empty, so let's bring them up on another medication. Here comes another medication. So one's going and one's coming. And so, and I went through that for 10 solid years.
Yeah.
And in the end, very, 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 very few of those medications did anything for me.
Yeah.
Because guess what? To this day, T, I'm going to tell you, guess what wakes me up at least once a night? Bam! That gun going off in my face.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, I'm having that with the medication. It doesn't stop with the medication. It doesn't stop without the medication. Why not just have it?
Yeah.
Why
And
not
that's
just
what
take it?
that's what I told Robbie, my doctor. That's what I told her. At some point they were giving me the benzodiazepams, and the side effects were outrageous. And
So true.
I just thought, I got to figure out a way to live with the screams, because even on the meds, I still hear them.
Ain't
So
that the truth?
yeah, and so you're trying to process, and then there's other treatment, and we are going to do a podcast later with meds and treatment, EMDR, brain spotting, cognitive talk, but that's a very real and very absolute reality that we go through all the time. In our situation, that's what we deal with, and trust me, for those of you that don't understand where we're coming from, or whether you're in law enforcement or you're not, these conversations that we're having today, we have on a daily basis. We have them in group.
Yes, we do.
We have them when we're burning some cigars, just hanging out. This doesn't, just because the podcast stopped doesn't mean it stops for us, right? We still wake up in the middle of the night. We still have night terrors. It's going to continue until they figure out how they're going to deal with the police officers. And one of the things that stuck with me was trying to when people aren't taking care of the people that take care of them, it's going to backfire on them, because they're just refusing to treat us like this is a very real issue in the world.
It's too minimalized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Way too minimalized. You can't send a police officer who's been into a shooting or a traumatic event even. I always say this in any of my presentations that I do, and that is, whatever you do, if you're an active duty officer, do not quantify your traumatic events with mine. Like, well, you know what? I didn't get shot, so I'm not going to have the problems that crazy man had.
Technically, you didn't get shot.
You didn't get
either.
shot
I
anyway.
didn't get shot.
and you're a fucking wreck.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a train wreck, and I didn't even get shot. Instead of just celebrating and doing cartwheels down the street, I'm a crazy person. But don't quantify what you've gone through, because when you go to a dead infant call, that affects your soul, man. And I mean, that touches you as a human being. And if it doesn't, then you're probably not a police officer, because we came into this job to help people.
Yeah.
I'm going to guarantee you there's not a cop out there in America that said, why did you join the police force? To help people. Honestly, that's almost like pat answer, because this is our calling. That's why we get in here.
Yeah.
We get into this because, we see injustice and we're like, I wish
wanna
I
do
could stop
something
that.
about that.
I
Right.
wish I could stop that.
Right.
And that's why it's the best job in America, in the world, because when you can stop somebody who's hurting somebody who cannot defend themselves, and you can take that person, stop them, and put them in a cage and make them face justice, there is nothing more gratifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you can stop a child from being injured, there's nothing more gratifying than that. When you can stop a woman from being beaten by an abusive boyfriend or spouse, nothing. I mean, I feel like I'm on a gold medal podium every time because I just won the Olympic gold medal because I stopped this guy from beating this defenseless woman.
So, because we're in a room full of crazies and we don't remember, real quick, what made you write this book?
Oh
yeah. Hey.
You did ask me that
Okay,
like an
yeah.
hour ago. So it started as, sorry for the sidetrack, but that's our life. It started as I would go to these counselors, and I was so far blown into PTSD that I was literally a shivering, pissing, drooling wreck. Like I would see Jerry in my living room, and I would urinate on myself. And I would go into my counselor. I was seeing her 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And I would go in there, and I would have no input for her. I was just sitting there numb. Literally, like every inch of my body had been shot up with Novocaine. I couldn't even feel anything. And I would go in there, and she said, Mark, you got to give me some input. Could you possibly write down what happened?
That's
Through
where
your
it
week.
started. 'Cause
Just give me a note.
Write it down
She
seems
said just-
evidentiary to me.
I got that.
She
Yeah.
said,
My
just
doctor
give me a
write it
Post-it
down.
note. When you come in here, I got to have something to work with, man.
Oh, right.
And her name was Dr. Amy Krutchkov. And I'm going to tell you, she is an angel. If you need help and she's available, you see her. Another great resource is Dr. Amy White, who I currently see. But she said, you got to give me something. So all I could muster up was I couldn't even fathom a notebook. So I would take a yellow Post-it note and I'd put bad dreams. And I'd go in there. I'm not kidding. I would walk into Amy's office and I would have a Post-it note and said, bad dreams on one. Another one would say, peed my pants. Another one would say, scared when wife shut the cupboard door.
Yeah. Startle effect.
Yeah, she would just shut the cupboard. It would just be a normal of the cupboard closing. And I would bounce up out of that couch like a gunshot just went off on my face.
huh.
You
That
have
makes
paid
sense.
attention in counseling.
Yeah.
So I went into Amy with these Post-it notes, and I'd say, like I'd done something good.
Yeah.
I got my homework. I got my homework, teacher. And
With
I would
3
turn
Post-it
those
notes
Post-it
and
notes
shit.
in, and she'd be like, great. Okay, let's work with these.
Yeah.
And it started as a collection of Post-it notes. And then on the other side, my comrades were calling me. They're like, man, what's happening? Are you okay? What can we do for you? They don't know.
Right.
They don't
Right.
know because
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know what I had.
Yeah.
I didn't know what my symptoms. I didn't know how to ask for help or how to get care. And so my comrades would say, man, says, the department sent you a termination notice? I said, yeah. They said, if I don't get better in 12 months, they're firing me. And they're like, Mark, you got to start writing this down. They're screwing you, man. You got to do something. And says, yeah. Well, I couldn't.
Right.
So I would just collect these documents, and I'd put them in a file, in a folder. I got a manila envelope.
But that wasn't your department. That was your
It was not my
HR or
department.
something.
Yeah.
My
Somebody
department
else sending
and my
that.
people in my department, the officers, the staff, the line level officers, the sergeants, and the commanders and the lieutenants were behind me.
Because they understood.
Yeah, and even
understood what you've
yeah, and even
just
my
been
chief
through.
was in his capacity. You know, I mean, but he couldn't involve himself in it in certain situations. But so they're like, man, they're screwing you, Mark. You got to do something to help yourself.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. And then my best friend, Pete Ronan, the left-handed circus freak in my shooting,
Yeah.
he said, you ought to write a book about this.
Oh.
And so that planted the seed in my head. And so Pete was really the real true inspiration for this book. And he planted that seed. I said, yeah. But I was like a dazed
Yeah, you were a
psychopath
fucking
at the
soup
time.
sandwich at that point.
So this collection of Post-it notes grew, and then they got into a piece of notebook paper, and then they turned into these note piles.
yeah.
And then this collection of documents on the legal side from the department as what was happening and what they were required to do. That grew. And so I was like, yeah, look at this big pile of papers. So, I know. What a great metamorphosis.
Yeah.
So I started mashing these things together. And one day I said, I am going to write a book about this. I am going to write a book about this. Because it's not only affecting me. I said it's affecting my marriage. It's coming apart. It's stressful on my wife. And she's trying to help me. And she's doing the best she can. But I should really document this. So I started writing a book. And I started typing away at the old laptop computer. It was a desktop back then. And I started typing away on that. And I started out, I said, I don't know how to write a book.
You did it?
But you know what? I said, I'll just do the call.
You did.
I
Did
said-
it.
And I said, you know what? How did it happen? I said, well, until one day, I was living a normal life. And that's the opening line in my book, until one day.
Yeah.
And it's the closing line of my book, too, until one day. And I hope to battle this and fight this and see this through and process it and try, you know, like I'm a continual drug trier. Like I'll try this prescription, I'll try that prescription. I've even gotten carded for legal marijuana. I've even tried, you know, eating gummy bears and any kind of marijuana I could. Anything I could to try to get relief from these symptoms that are just meshed in together into me.
What year did you write that book? Like, how long ago?
It got published in 2017. In May of 2017, it got published. And so I was writing a book, and here I am. Now I need to refine this. Come on, man. You can do better than that. You can do better than that. And my publisher said, take out all the drug stuff because the drug companies are going to sue us. And they'll never see publication.
Right.
You'll just go to a lawsuit. He said, do you want to publish a book or do you want to go into a lawsuit? I said, I haven't had enough of lawsuits. Thank you very much. So I said, you're right. I'll just take out all the drug stuff. So that deleted over 100 pages of the book in itself because I wanted to call out these drug companies by name. They said, no. Tell your story. Don't get into a lawsuit. So I took all that out. And as I'm writing this, during the course of this, and every time I would send in an edit, it was a 2-month turnaround before they got it back to me. And I was just like, man, this is long. And in the course of those revisions and over and over and over and over, two of my friends had committed suicide. And I'm just like, this might have made an effect in their
Recovery
or life. I don't know that it would have, but I sure as hell want to make a try.
Right.
And so I said, I don't give a shit about crossed T's, dotted I's. Publish that son of a bitch right now.
Were those officers?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
But two of my friends and comrades committed suicide. And I'm like, I'm not going to be worried about crossed T's, spelling, and all that shit when there's people that are dying out there. And this might make an effect and might save somebody. So I published it. And so it's a raw almost a first draft, really.
Mhm.
But it's published, and within 3 weeks of it being published, this lady who I don't know, she messaged me on Facebook, and I didn't have it linked into Facebook, and she said, "Hey, are you the guy that wrote this book?" And I was like, just blown away. I was like, I'm not a techno guy. I don't know any of that. And I was like, I messaged her back. I said, yeah, I am. How did you know about it? She said, well, I got to tell you something. She said, a friend of mine bought this book for me on Saturday. And on Monday of this week, she said, I'd made up my mind I was going to kill myself on Friday. I was going to drop my kids off at the bus stop on Friday so that they would have the weekend to get over my death and not miss any school. And so I started messaging her back, and I was like, what's going on? She said, my friend got me this book, and she said she thought it might help me. And she said, I got your book on Wednesday, and I started reading it Wednesday night. I couldn't put it down. She said, because I have post-traumatic stress disorder from an assault that I'm a victim of, and I was pregnant at the time, and this person knew I was pregnant and was trying to beat me and kill my baby inside of me. And I have post-traumatic stress disorder from that. Said, but although I'm not a police officer and I didn't get into what you did, said, I had so many things in common with you. The camaraderie that I had, knowing there's somebody else, one other person on this earth, understood what I went through. Even though it wasn't a shooting, she said, I went through the same things as you.
Yeah.
And this thing replayed, this loop, this movie that won't stop playing. She said, when you're talking about those things in your book, she said, that resonated with me. And it's given me hope.
Good.
She said, so I'm not going to kill myself this morning. I just dropped my kids off at the bus stop. And so I was like, whew, it's a good thing I published it.
Yeah.
You
right
did
when
it.
I did.
It was
Yeah.
raw.
Yeah.
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 Well,
And since then, I've had no less than 100 officers message me, contact me, phone call me, say, hey, I've recognized something in myself
yeah.
in your book, and I'm going to go get help. So I don't know how many people it's prevented from falling off that cliff of PTSD that I went over, but I'm praying and hoping that it got somebody some help, some care, or at least the camaraderie, knowing, hey, you know what? I'm not crazy and I'm not alone. I may be crazy, but I'm not alone.
You're not alone.
Well, you know it did. So good.
It's not a lot
So
of
good.
You're not alone for sure. That's
Definitely. Not
definitely.
alone.
So
Holy crap.
as we wrap up,
Where can they get that book?
where can we get it? And what are you graciously made some donations to Pistol with the book. So where can they get it?
So here's what we do. You can get it from the publisher. The publisher is called Book Venture, and you go on their book menu. You go to their bookstore, and then you scroll down, and I'm probably the last guy on the list. It's a self-help book, but the full title is called Headshot: How I Survive with Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. You can get it directly from the publisher, or what 99% of everybody else gets it from is through Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. The problem with Amazon is not the problem. With Amazon, because you're getting it at such a low price, I think it's $9.98 or something like that. All of that comes out of the publisher or the author's proceeds. That's this guy. But what I've pledged to Pistol is $1 per product sold. So you can even buy an ebook. An ebook I think costs you $3, and I get about 60 cents of that. But we still give $1 of all the proceeds to Pistol, no matter what, whether it's an ebook, or whether it's an actual paperback, which is like $10, or you can get a hardback, or you can get it through my website, which I have a website for the book called Headshot.world, WORLD. And you can get it directly from me, and I'll actually autograph it if you send it through there, and I'll ship it to you myself. But either way, no matter what product you buy, if it's an ebook, paperback, hardback, whatever, we're giving $1 of every product sold to Pistol. And Pistol, what I didn't get an opportunity to talk about is, through all my counselors, all my psychologists, all my therapists, all my, people with a lot of letters behind their names, I get nothing better than my camaraderie that I get through my brothers and sisters at the Pistol organization. When you're isolated and alone with post-traumatic stress disorder, and you're never going to feel like you're more alone on a deserted island than when you have those 4 letters behind your name. You get your camaraderie through your brothers and sisters that you lost through your department. A lot of people abandon you out of fear. A lot of people abandon you out of just not knowing how to help you. And then it's just the job, too. If you're not in the job, you're not going call to call with your brothers and sisters. You just
fade away.
You fade.
Yeah.
You fade. But here, you're back in it as far as fighting your new battle. Your new call to call is, hey, man, I was so depressed the other night. I was really suicidal. Hey, man, I was so sleep deprived this last thing. Hey, I went to this funeral of a good friend of mine, and it really triggered me. And that's... Who wants to sign up for that? Nobody? But I'm going to tell you, that's what you have if you have post-traumatic stress disorder. And just like that young mother of 3 kids, she had camaraderie with me, never talked to me, never knew me, wasn't a cop. She had camaraderie with me in knowing that. And if you can find camaraderie in PTSD, that's your church. You need that. That's a lifeline, that's a link, and Pistol is a link that is saving cops from committing suicide. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give $1. These guys are going to publish this book for me in perpetuity. It doesn't matter if it sells 1 copy 20 years from now or 1,000 copies a month. They're going to publish it forever. And forever, a minimum of $1 is coming to the Pistol organization. And
Pistol thanks you for that.
Yeah, we do.
Well, I'm honored. I'm going to tell you what. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to be in Pistol. Because I'm surrounded by heroes and heroines. Not like the drug.
There she
There's
is.
T. But there's hundreds of T's. Just like that.
Yeah.
And if you need that camaraderie, don't fight it alone, man, because I did it not knowing what I was fighting. But with more education, more awareness, the more people are going to know, hey, I got a little problem myself. It'll help you. It'll soothe. Pistol is medication for your internals, for your heart, for your soul, for you, the person. Get it. Take that medicine. It's called Pistol.
And Pistol will never tell you. Well, Pistol understands why you had your gun out, buddy.
Yeah, we're not going to question that.
We fucking understand.
Pistol
All right.
does know.
So we'll wrap it up. I appreciate you coming out, Mark.
Honor, man. It's an honor.
T, it's always good to see you.
Yes, it is.
It was a rough week last week.
It's going to be a rough night.
Yeah. So we'll just dedicate this podcast, even though it's PTSD. Last week, Salt River here in Arizona lost an officer, Officer Clayton Townsend, who was a 5-year veteran of the Salt River Police Department, lost his life. He was doing a traffic stop on the freeway and was hit and killed. And
senseless.
Absolutely senseless. And then California also, it was a rookie police officer, Officer Natalie Corona, who was 22, just out of the academy, was ambushed. So we'll definitely pay our respects and dedicate this to them. So, Mark, I appreciate it, brother. We'll definitely do it again. We'll come back and talk about the meds. We'll also talk about, because we didn't touch on why you never trust a big butt and a smile, but we'll get to that next time.
Uh-oh.
All right?
That's addiction.
All right.
That's the addiction version.
That's the addiction part of it.
Pistol.org. And if you want to donate, you can donate there or on a Facebook page.
Yeah, and we'll put all the links in the bottom of the YouTube video, provided I get it situated. All right? All right. See you guys next time.